Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the RMS2 Hopaii 556223 suppressor. RMS2 may be a new name to you, but they have a deep pedigree coming from Knights and KG suppressors and making suppressors. The Hopaii, their 556223 suppressor we're reviewing in this video, owes its lineage to the SWR, the Omega baffle design, but technology has improved, materials have improved, QC has improved. So RMS2 offering this can in a default direct thread with some other features that we'll get into, is it going to be something better or at the very least comparable to what's already on the market with some features that might make it a little bit more preferable than some of the other suppressors out there? Getting into the features, the Hopaii comes, like I've already mentioned, 556223. It's not a multi-cal can, which I appreciate. There's a lot of people out there doing multi-cal cans. I like dedicated caliber cans when I can get them, especially for 556223. I don't necessarily like to use the 30 cal can on that if I can get away with it, just because I find the tone on the 556223 specific cans to be better. If you're only going to buy one suppressor, obviously multi-cal is the way to go. But if you're going to get suppressors for multiple guns, multiple calibers, it's always good to get one in that specific caliber versus kind of having to compromise with a multi-cal can. At just over 6 inches and around 15 ounces, it's light and it doesn't add a lot of length to the gun. And it is full auto rated down to a 10-inch per manufacturer specifications, which makes the can very attractive initially to me. If you're not familiar with my review process, it's 2,000 rounds accelerated life cycle. I've never felt that 200 rounds is enough to get a good feel for a product when it's firearms related. While 2,000 rounds isn't even scratching the potential lifespan of a suppressor or most firearms accessories, it does give us a larger sample size for any problems to occur or to see if your initial performance is based on low round count, and as you get into 500, 600, 700 rounds and further, if problems are going to arise. So I find 2,000 rounds is pretty reasonable. The very first thing I'm going to do with almost any product I'm reviewing when it's firearms related, ammunition related, is the 500 round burn down. The whole purpose of this burn down is to accelerate the life cycle of the accessory, in this case the Hopaii suppressor. What I'm looking for is to see if a high volume of fire in a short period of time is going to cause any change in tone, any change in relative accuracy based on what I'm doing, or have the suppressor fail to meet the specifications the manufacturer says it's going to meet. So for this burn down, I'm using it on an 11-inch gun, throwing in some select fire in there, and I'm going to try to fire these 500 rounds as fast as I can. Here's your burn down. That's hot. Not only did we get the Hopaii red hot during the day, but we also lit the candle at the end. They quoted it as select fire, I should say, full auto rated on a 10-inch. I was shooting on an 11, and I would go ahead and agree with that. Of course, there's a lot of different definitions, and military's definitions, and some manufacturers have different definitions on what full auto rated is, but this thing definitely handled a sustained rate of fire, taking 500 rounds in under 4 minutes. So I'd call it, as far as the burn down is concerned, definitely passing. Now, I did say the Hopaii defaults as direct thread. That's how it comes, but it will accept a chemo adapter or an Omega, the ASR, or any system comparable to that for whatever your chosen muzzle device is. There's so many muzzle devices out there, and some of them are really, really good. Some of them are passable. Once you put a suppressor on, the muzzle device may or may not matter depending on the length of the gun. One thing I don't care for with new suppressor companies is they always produce their own muzzle device. And if that muzzle device isn't essential to the suppressor system, or if it isn't providing a world's better performance in muzzle devices that are already existing, it just kind of aggravates me that now I have to purchase another muzzle device for a suppressor, and it's kind of married to that one gun. I'm using the chemo adapter on this with the QD system, took off the direct thread, put on the QD, and now it'll go on any dead air muzzle device I have, which I really appreciate. Of course, I can still use my dead air cans, that's no problem. Other parts of the review process I did, I threw the QD on there just during my normal practice, got some more select fire done on it, and I was also able to see if there was a significant shift. This particular rifle is zeroed on a dead air Sandman. I threw the Hopaii on there and I didn't see a significant shift at the distances I was shooting at. I'm sure if I put it out to a 50 or 200, I would see some sort of a shift, because there are, you know, they're two totally different suppressors. But at the 50-meter range where I was zeroed at, I didn't see a significant enough shift to actually worry me so much that I was actually going to make a correction in the zero. Now, one of the things that comes up with suppressors is return to zero. Because it defaults to direct thread, if you're going to put this on a direct thread, thread it directly onto the barrel, the only time you're probably going to remove it is when you're cleaning. But will it return to zero? This is a very real concern. So this is something I definitely want to check out as far as accuracy goes. Is removing the Hopaii, is it going to return to zero when I put it back onto whatever my suppressor hope happens to be? So for this particular situation, I used my FN DMR2, which is an 18-inch 5.56. I shot it out at 100 yards of the zero distance, put the suppressor on, shot a 5-round group for zero confirmation. This is that group. Then I let the gun and the suppressor cool. I removed the suppressor from the gun, reattached the suppressor to the gun, and fired another 5-round group. I would call that return to zero. I can't really see a significant difference between the two groups. You may have to make some small adjustments if you change ammunition type, but you'd have to do that anyway. But as far as removing the suppressor, putting the suppressor back on, return to zero, I'd call that return to zero, which is something I'm very happy with, because I've had some direct thread cans in the past that kind of returned to zero, but it was never quite the same, and I'd have to make small adjustments to the actual zero each time I took the can off to clean the gun. Even running the Hopaii with the QD attachment, the can isn't significantly longer really than anything else I use for 5.56, 223, even on SBRs. So I used it a lot. Of course, for the 2,000 round review process and then beyond, I'm going to continue to use it. But the tone is good. It's, you know, it's ear safe, meaning I don't get pain when firing it under a canopy indoors or obviously outdoors on an open range, which sound is a little bit less of an issue. Because decibel levels outside of the lab are problematic. Recording it on a range is something, it's not something I do in my suppressor review process, so mainly I'm focused on how the can sounds. Does it cause any significant concussion issues or pain issues when shooting it indoors? Because my ultimate test of any suppressor is how is it going to sound inside. And of course, you watching a video, you can hear the suppressor on video and you get an idea of what it sounds like, but you're not actually experiencing it in person, which is something considerably different. During my time with the Hopaii, I've been very happy with its performance. Hot or cold, it runs consistently. It doesn't provide really any noticeable gas back into the face, and that's something I really like. I mean, the operating system of your AR or whatever you're shooting, 5.56, 223, is definitely a significant factor in how much gas comes back to the shooter's face. And of course, there's other environmental issues as well. But this is not a gassy can. That's something I really appreciated. So firing it on DI or piston guns, which most of my ARs are piston driven, I didn't notice any significant issues with gas, and usually pistons are a little bit better for that anyway, but one of the DI rifles I have that I shot it on, I didn't notice it. I didn't even think about it, which means it wasn't occurring, which is something I really appreciate. I like to not have to think about that. Does the Hopaii do anything significantly better than other suppressors that are already on the market? And I think that kind of depends on what you're looking for. It allowed a sub-MOA rifle to remain sub-MOA, which is something I really appreciate. I like accuracy. I hate when a suppressor causes me to lose accuracy. Also notice going from direct thread to the QD system, in this case I'm using the dead air chemo, which is one of my favorite QD systems out there, there was also not a loss in accuracy, which I also appreciate. Sometimes your QD system allows just enough play in the suppressor to cause accuracy issues or significant point of aim, point of impact shifts from suppressed to unsuppressed, something I didn't notice either. So it's checking all the right boxes. Because it's versatile as far as muzzle devices go, you can use the dead air chemo, or you can use the ASR, or you can use the Q system, the one that Q puts out. So you've got some options. If you've already got muzzle devices for those suppressors, then the Hopaii is going to fit right in with whatever your favorite muzzle device is. And kind of like I already touched on, sometimes suppressor companies don't make the best muzzle devices, or they make really good muzzle devices, but maybe there's a muzzle device you like better. And if there's a QD system for it, and it's comparable with the Hopaii, then you can throw that on there and use it. And again, you know, kind of just to go back over that, I like dedicated caliber suppressors. So being able to use this 5.56 223, it's not going to have the volume or tone issues that I get from some of the multi-caliber cans that are out there. So what's my final verdict on the Hopaii? Well, I haven't had anything negative to say throughout the review process. In case you haven't noticed, that's because I wasn't really able to find anything. Full auto rated down to 10-inch. I was shooting on 11s. It can be direct thread, or you can have a quick detach adapter. 5.56 223 specific, which is, you know, something I also like. The finish held up throughout the 500 round burn down, and then the other 1,500 plus rounds I fired. My practice sessions are usually 500 to 1,000 rounds, depending on what I'm working on, and I tend to run a considerable volume of fire. I may shoot 500 rounds in 2 hours on the range, or 1,000 rounds in 3 hours on the range. And the finish held up very, very well. Overall, I've been very impressed with the Hopaii's performance. So if somebody's going to ask me, is it a good can? I'm going to say absolutely it's a good can, and it's something I would recommend. And the price point is comparable and very competitive to some of the suppressors that are already out there. So while the suppressor market may seem saturated sometimes, it's nice to see that a new company can come out with a product that's not necessarily just more of the same. They're coming right out of the gate competitive and actually performing as well or better than some of the other suppressor characteristics that you'll find from other brands. So I would definitely recommend the Hopaii to anybody who's interested or curious about it. I'm Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.